Ma Jim Den the Jevan Rajama Yandama Zobesa Rivada Shazon Deman de Rejevan Jide Jimba Jundi Kalo Juvala Meva Lada Menam Jedu Sanje Jim Den the Bejawa Shaja Tuvana Shazim Shuda Jajewa Dema Jim Den the Jevan Raju Yandava Zobe Sanje Rivada Shazon Deman de Rejevan Jiden Jamba Jibun de Kano Juvala Meva Lada Menam Jedu Sanje Jumden de Bejawa Shaja Tuvana Shazim Shuda Jazuja Demba Jumden de Jevan Raju Zobe Sanje Rivada Shazon Deman de Rejevan Jiden Given to Kalo Juvala Meva Lada Menam Jedu Sanje Jumden Bejawa Shaja Tuvana Shazim Shuda Jazuja Kanze Ganyan Zowa Jadamase, Sajan Dena Goma Debru, Manen Jiden Dena Georges, Dese Kavajama Chaz, Nanda Gunga Shodo Sosawa, Ishija Sejan, Chavan Jiden Sumana Meva, Gombo Shunye Jama Chaz, Senjo Dema Timenda Veshe, Sendo Java Jama Chaz, Lujejana Seva Sumache, Nyame Jinshen Jama Chaz. Gombo Tuji Chedema, Tomje Kembe Tumba, Sonam Yenden Jazu. The Shinshala Chaz and Lotabe, the Jachava, giving a son. Chedo de Nam Shoju, Shinju Shala Chaz, and Chenet Rivanoya. Lavatala Rabdone, Shingatama Yenden. Gendelaya Chaz and Divachi, and Misha Gawa Pesos. Rangesin and Yozo de Tennis and Jedema, Karma Rima, Jumasha, Sugar. Melang Lodan, Jenda Bondization, the Tarata, Sonam Dia, Tomjes, Kobantam, Jinjan, Datu, the Gadanda, Shiva Lodri, Siveso, Joan Joveration.
To the teacher, blessed one gone beyond, full history, completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfecting knowledge and in good conduct, Sravakas, no overlord, supreme guide of beings to be gained. Teacher of gods and humans, to you the completely and fully awakened, last one, the glorious conqueror, subdue upon the Shakya clan, and prostrate make office before to the teacher, the blessed one gone beyond, full history, completely perfected, fully awakened, perfect in knowledge and in good conduct, Sravakas, no overlord, supreme guide of beings to be gained. Teacher of gods and humans, to you the completely and fully awakened one, the blessed one, the glorious conqueror. Subdue upon the Shakya plan, I prostrate, make offerings, and go for to the teacher, the blessed one gone beyond, full history, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and in good conduct, Sravakas, know of the world, supreme guide of beings to be tamed. Teacher of gods and humans, to you the complete and fully awakened one, the blessed one, the glorious conqueror. Subdue upon the Shakya clan, I prostrate, make offerings, and go for it. Men supreme among humans, you upon this earth, you paced out 7 strides and said, I am supreme in this world. To you who are wise, then I prostrate. With pure bodies, formed supremely pure, wisdom motion like golden mountain. Flame that blazes in the 3 worlds, we know the best, to you I prostrate. With the supreme signs, face like spotless moon, color like gold, to you I prostrate. You are immaculate with 3 words and incomparably wise one, to you I prostrate. The Savior having great compassion, the teacher having all understanding, the field of merit with qualities like vast ocean, to you the one born to dustness I prostrate. The purity which makes one free from attachment, the virtues which frees one from the lower realms, the one path, sublime pure reality, to the Dharma which pacifies I prostrate. Those who are liberated and also show the path to liberation, the holy being qualified with realization, who are devoted to the moral precepts, to you the sublime community intending virtue I prostrate. Do not commit any non-virtuous actions, perform only perfect virtuous actions,
Subdue your mind thoroughly. This is the teaching of the Buddha. A star, a mirage, a flame of lamp, an illusion, a drop of dew or bubble, a dream, a flash of lightning, a cloud. See conditioned things as such. Through this merit, the essential beings attain rank of all seeing, subdue of all forms, and be delivered from emotional suffering of aging, sickness, and death. Sanje Shono Soje Shono no Chaju Pato Dante Jasu Chen, Dage Jasu Jebe Sona, Jola Penche Sanje Drupa Shono, Sanje Shono Soje Shono no Chaju Pato Dante Jasu Chen, Dage Jasu Jebe Sona, Jola Penche Sanje Drupa Shono, Sanje Shono Soje Shono, Chaju Pato Dante Jasu Chen, Dage Jasu Jebe Sona, Jola Penche Sanje Drupa Shono.
I go for a vision to enlighten the Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha. Through the merit I create by practicing giving and the other perfections, may I quickly attain the state of Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha. Through the merit I create by practicing giving and the other perfections, may I quickly attain the state of Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha. Through the merit I create by practicing giving and the other perfections, may I quickly attain the state of Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings.
Tongje Gemala Cha Solon Deda Sanje Jumde de Jinshi Wanda Ajum. Yanda Bonzo Besanja Wanda Shadon de Devare Chevan Jidin Jemba Jibo. Kalo Jeva Lana Meba Hada Mena Jedema Sanje Jumden de So Dishinshi Batin Sonam Da. Judema Gevezawa Nama Chimizava Severa Dojima. Sonam Jeteranam Jeshe Peje Sambano Jedema Tena Jumba Dojima Jiyurima Tonam Bidima. Tebe Mevana Lombago, Shero Sigil, Tona Ziba, Sinjatam Jitamba, Chanju Sembanam, the Yavan Pabe Kazana, Yangan, the Trojano, the Tebe, Ishipadam, Baba Simjim, Sonambata, Yanim, Kujeta, Chomisha, Kusumba Mevan, the Vata, Magoga, Soda, Yavan, Magoga, Sumevata, Tumela, Pumbata, number to come on them, the Gajan, the one that should be. Yozo Duantala number to Pumbon. Sibana Juba, Chivola Giva, Yishi Yozo, Debata Madunju, Debata Majumata, Tadaju, Sanji Jumden, Yishina, Neva, Yangana Deva, Yanda Vanija, Talanda, Simjatam, Siva, Sama Shubati. The Dania Sanji Jumden, Jukuchi, in the Yanda, Namazo, Tabation, Tomagiva, Padugiva, Tomagiva. Tenzan was interested in Manduba, Yozo, Taba, Yozo Chama, Yata, Demi, Tuchaba. Never demanded on the tenure, but Kavan just also ranking. Jim then the Yanabasu. Chun the one and the water when you watch it, so much under the draw. Medium by major devoted them, but Temba you watch it or Tawach again, the Nabashu. Too much you got Temaja, you charge of a son of the Beji singing years, Jibena. Kundawan Jibena Zoju Jambo. 관계에 도전에서도 나와도 제가 매주 담배천에 된줄 거담다. 차체로 Yeah, so we are page 96. So this whole so many pages that trying to kind of establish that the Hinayana and the Mahayana both, in order to achieve the liberation of free from second existence, it is necessary to have realization emptiness. Emptiness here is, from the Prasangic point of view, the absence of intrinsic existence. So absence of intrinsic existence means any entity that is never in here with with its basis, right? Like self, myself. So I am exist. So you can say I am happy, I'm not happy, I'm ill, I'm cured. That entity of myself being cure and ill and excited and sad and disappointed, that very entity of myself, right, is never in here with body, not in here with feeling, not in here with perception like eye conscious, nose conscious, tongue consciousness, even the elements like entity of myself, not in here with my breath, not in here with my heat, not in here with my moisture in the body, not in here with the solidity, the wind, right? So the basis that make me existing, right, is devoid of the entity of the myself. So we talk about the entity. So entity means something, identified in a single unit. Something identified in a single unit is the kind of the entity of myself is identified in a single unit. A single unit, therefore, is not the body, but this body can be owned by me. Entity of myself, not in my feeling, but this can be my feeling. So the very entity of myself, the continuously existing with each aggregates, and itself not within the dependent, the phenomena that you are depending upon. So then why the entity of myself is identified in single unit? So then it's identified in single unit, therefore identified is imposes in a single unit, is projected in a single unit, it constructed in a single unit. Not that myself, by my own essence, I did not exist as a ill, sick, right? Cure, short, tall. So the Pratyekabuddha school is saying that no entity, right? So I think the sound of entity, it kind of implying that, yes, it exists by itself. No, here it's saying entity is a single unit. Conceptually put it in the single unit. Conceptually identified in a single unit, not the object itself, right? So this kind of absence of intrinsic existing, kind of realization of that, the absence of intrinsic existing, absence of inherent existing, is the it's the actual path that can lead you to the liberation and enlightenment. Without this path, there is no another way to attain the liberations. There is no another way to free yourself from the second existence. So this is why realization emptiness is necessary within the path, right? For someone who is seeking for liberation or enlightenment. So they continue, Lama Tsongkapha, so many pages they're trying to establish. So so then the lower school, like Sotandhik school and Vabhashik school, and the kind of Mahayana school, like mind-only school and middle schools. So some of the middle school and some of the mind-only school, so they think that the to attain the liberations, it is not necessary to realize the things lacking intrinsic nature. Rather, it's simply you can attain the liberation through meditating on the 16 attributes 16 attributes or the Four Noble Truths. Within the 16 attributes, there's the emptiness, selflessness. This selflessness means not the self absence of intrinsic existence, right? Rather, the self being not self-sufficiently exist. Self-sufficient exist means independent I, which is Atma, called is unity, independent, permanent. So by emptying or negating that kind of the self or I is enough to attain the liberations. So the Pratyekabuddha school says no. So not just that. So you have to realize the self that is totally the absence of intrinsic existence, totally absent within its own basis. So then I'll just read, and the Precious Garland says, page number 96, says the Precious Garland says, in the great vehicle, non-origination is taught. In the great vehicle and the Mahayana Sutra, what it teaches in the Mahayana Sutra. So non-origination is taught. Non-origination means no such thing, conditioned phenomena that is that arises independently, that arises intrinsically, right? So that is non-origination is taught in the great vehicle, and in the other, in the other means other the the lower vehicles means the sutra that followed by the Hinayana. Even the sutra, the Hinayana Sutra, and talks about the exhaustions. So, kind of, exhaustions, namely emptiness. So here, Lama Tsongkapha and Nagarjuna are saying in the Hinayana Sutras, talking about the exhaustion of conditional phenomena, right? And Mahayana non-originations. So just namely separate is the same meaning. It's all talking about emptiness. So exhaustion means kind of, seba, duji sebas, that primordially exhaust, right, intrinsic entity, right? And some kind of Zemani Shivas, as I think in the Essence of Eloquence, Lama Tsongkapha's text, which is translated by Jeffrey Hawkins, and he says, he used the term quiescent from the start, right? So from the beginning, by nature, things are totally absent of intrinsic nature. So in the Hinayana Sutra, talking about things by natures totally exhaust with intrinsic nature. And great vehicle non-originations are same. It's all talking about the emptiness. Since the cessations, non-arising are the same, gobas, here gobas. Sometimes the cessations named on the emptiness, because by meditating on the emptiness, it sees the misconceptions, right? So by continuously meditating on the emptiness, and then it will lead to the total elimination of the afflictive emotions. While you are in emptiness, it absence the eradicates the object that is apprehended by misconceptions, right? So non-errors is the same, concede the Mahayana scripture is authentic. Here, the Nagarjuna state that in the Mahayana sutras, non-origination through the intrinsic nature is taught to be emptiness, while when the other Hinayana sutra teaches emptiness. So they teach the exhaustion of the conditioned things, since the reference of these two presentations of emptiness are the same. So Nagarjuna is saying one need not be intolerant of the teaching of the emptiness in the Mahayana Sutra. So they are intolerant, they are not patient with this because they could not really digest the kind of, conditional phenomena lacking intrinsic existence. So for them, this is totally nihilism. So they could not really digest that. So therefore, it's intolerant for them. But Lama Tsongkapha Nagarjuna says, so you should not be intolerant with this because in your sutra, they're talking about the primordially the absence of intrinsic existence, total exhaustion of the intrinsic nature, and Mahayana Sutra, the emptiness, non-originations are all same. So Nagarjuna is saying they will not be tolerant with teaching of the emptiness in the Mahayana Sutra. So on the matter of how the referent of these two presentations are identicals, some explains that now some other masters. This as follows: if the followers of the Sravakas school were to accept exhaustions with respect to the conditioned things, given that exhaustion is not possible if things possess intrinsic existence. So, given that exhaustion is not possible if things possess intrinsic existence, then one who accepts exhaustion must also accept. So, right from the start, the absence of intrinsic existence. Therefore, these two are in the actual fact identical. So this master is a little bit, not clear about the meaning from the Nagarjuna's text. This is kind of like, for example, if I say, if things are not absence of intrinsic existence, you cannot see things are changing. So because of the things are changing, therefore things are absence of intrinsic existence. So this is why emptiness and change are same, identical. If I say that, so I'm misinterpreting the meaning. So the emptiness and the change are not the same meaning. But change happened because of the emptiness, right? So this is like an airplane is flying due to the gas what goes the petrol, right? Petrol. So then it says having petrol, it means you can fly. So your car must be flying too. So this must be a little bit, not clear. So therefore, these two are and actually identical. The interpretation is totally incorrect. For one could apply the same argument to the Madhyamika, since the intrinsic existing is impossible if it exists. So then, right, since the intrinsic existing impossible, if it exists, whatever phenomena such as sprout and so on that Madhyamika accept will have to be accepted right from the start as empty intrinsic existence. This could bring the consequences that all phenomena such as sprout would be identical to the emptiness. Similarly, the statement in the Precious Garland commentary that. So Lama Tsongkapha also says, so precious garden, there is no actual difference whatsoever between non-origination and momentariness, impermanent. Also betray the misunderstanding of the text meaning. So, yes, you can say because of the emptiness, things are momentarily changing, right? So, the impermanence of the phenomena, impermanence of the conditional phenomena are possible because of the things are absent of intrinsic existence. So you cannot just jump into conclusion saying emptiness and impermanence is the same, identical. So in the Hinayana Sutra, cited in the commentary on the 60 stanzas of the reasoning, one reads that which is the total elimination of this suffering. So in the sutra, this sutra, quoted in the Nagarjuna's, the commentary in the 60 stanzas of the reasoning. So in the sutra says that which is total elimination of this suffering. So this kind of the word, this means pointing at the present condition of suffering. This suffering. Definite eliminations. And definite eliminations, nyaparpangpas, purifications, and exhaustions, freedom from the attachment, cessations, all pacified, dissolutions, where no additional suffering is lead to. This non-originations and non-arising is the peace. This is excellent. It is thus, for this is the definite elimination of all aggregates. It is the extinction of the existence. It is freedom from the attachment. It is cessation, and it is a transcendent suffering. So once again I read, which is the total elimination of the suffering. So Dungen de Maluba Pangbas, pointing at present conditional suffering, pointing conditional sufferings. So this is which is total elimination of this suffering. So what is that thing is going to do the total elimination of this present suffering? So then the absence of intrinsic existing of the body, absence of intrinsic existing of the conditional suffering. So realization or absence of intrinsic existence of the conditional suffering is this is the total elimination of the suffering. Means this is going to eliminate, right, the present suffering. And then this is the very so that definite eliminations. Nyaparpangba means this, through this realization emptiness, once the eliminating the suffering is for definite. It's not like a temporarily, all right? And you overcome one time and next moment it come back. It's a definite eliminations. It's the purifications. So purifications, Yeah. So here it says, Nyabar Pangba, Changwar Chuvas. So Changwar Chuva means it's kind of like a purifying or cleansing. Changwar Chuva. Or you can say sanitizing, right? So, but all pointing at referring to the wisdom realizing emptiness. The wisdom realizing emptiness. So through this, what it does is total elimination of the suffering, and itself is a definite eliminations. It is the way to purify the mind from the afflictive emotion and exhaustions. So exhaustions means, so this is like, kind of, this is like when you burn the seed, right? So you have destroyed the whole seed, and that exhausts the sprout that coming in the future. So this is like wisdom realizing emptiness is the exhaustions, and it is the freedom from attachment. So why? Because it, how's that? It frees the mind from the attachment, and it ceased the giving rise of the sprout of the conditioned suffering in the future, and well pacified. And so never shivas, never shiva means. So it's not, never shiva, and well pacified means sometimes we do things, we clean up your house, right? And not being very mindful. So we cleanse just thinking about something else. So there's some left that dust, right? The well pacified means because your mind so close, almost kind of, touches the reality as it is. So through that, whatever the purifications is well pacified, right? It's not like you hire someone to clean up, or so you're just cleaning up with not cleaning up with not mindful. So this is like elimination of this suffering, the present, and the future, and the dissolutions here. It's future now. Dissolutions means this when the wisdom realizing emptiness, when it began to purifying, began to freeing the mind from the afflictive emotions, right? So this is not like a, what do you call that, machine that clean up the,
street sweeper?
Yeah. So like snow, cleaning up the,
Flower? Snow flower?
yeah, the machine that clean up the snow. So when it sucks from the bread, and then you just throw in another bowl. So wisdom realizing the way it overcome the afflictive emotions, not like a snow machine, like it just sucks here and dump in some place. So it's the way the wisdom realizing emptiness, overcoming or eliminating the afflictive emotions, dissolutions, it dissolve, right? Make it disappear within the emptiness, right? It's not kind of, so the dissolutions means total exhaustions, total disappearance, right? So within the emptiness. So when no additional, for the futures, no additional suffering is lead to. So there is no next condition of suffering. So this non-originations. So wisdom realizing emptiness is what it has revealed is non-originations. Nothing intrinsically arises, nothing intrinsically exists. And non-arising is the peace. So here peace, so this is like a peace through total elimination of the afflictive emotions, peace from total prevention of the future suffering, right? So that this is excellent. This is the, in the Tibetan, the word translated as a kyanoma. So kyanoma means, how to say, so for example, if someone gives you a gift, so that makes you so, feel satisfied or feel happy. So that gift is called kyanoma. So the whatever that you receive as a quality, the free from the afflictive emotions, is the excellent. It always pleases you. It's always delighted you. It always brings peace. So therefore, it is excellent. So it is thus, for this is the definite elimination of all aggregates. So it is the extinction of existence. Extinction of existence means, so from the previously it says, no additional suffering is lead to. So extinction of the existence, extinction of the second existence, extinction of the second existence. It is the freedom from the attachment, because the siege of the second existence is the attachment. And it is cessations. It is goba, it has abandoned. So therefore it is cessation. And it is the transcendental suffering. So nyangele devas. So the free from afflictive emotions. So this the sutra says, in the sutra. In explaining the meaning of these citations, Chandrakirti says, given the usage of the demonstrative, this, the word this, sound of this, the statement from the total elimination up to delusion is made from the point of view of our present suffering, or the aggregate alone. While from no additional suffering is lead to, up to the transcendental suffering is made from the perspective of our future suffering. So the suffering, the suffering that eliminate, or suffering that eliminated by the wisdom realizing emptiness, that includes the both present conditional suffering and the future conditional suffering. So then in developments, from the peace to the peace, ever peace, right? So this is only can bring from the wisdom realizing emptiness. So this is why the wisdom realizing emptiness is necessary for attaining liberation or Buddhahood. Yeah. So the thought might occur and to some that this suffering or aggregates here refer to the afflictions. So conditional suffering, this suffering or the future suffering. And some master says this is the suffering referred to the afflictive emotions, which are pacified, instantiation.
Instantiations? Okay.
Instantiations, specific instantiations.
I've never seen this word.
Yeah. maybe this does not exist. So this is like, like in the Sanskrit. So some words are kind of specifically named of the one particular, although name itself is general. Like in the Sanskrit, this is kind of, this, like waterborne, and then referring to the flowers. So generally, there are many things that are waterborne, right? So waterborne germs, bacteria, so airborne, right? But here, this is this waterborne is not referring to anything in general. It has to be designed specifically, kind of, referring, pointing to the flower itself. So, and similarly, so if the suffering is particularly pointing or particularly kind of illustrating the afflictive emotions, then these two factors, the suffering and the aggregates, so a generic aggregate is being used here, referred to the particular. This explanation too is incorrect. Now, if generic terms cannot be explained in terms of the universal, it then need to be interpreted in terms of the particular. So suffering, conditional suffering, because it captures the whole kind of physical condition of suffering, mental condition of suffering, the both. So it always, indicates suffering in general. It never kind of, used to pinpoint one particular. So interpreted in terms of the particular. Here, however, the word can be explained in the sense of generic term. Is the term that is not kind of, the indicating in general, then it has to be, then you can say the word can use to indicate one particular. Suffering is the general concept. It that indicates both physical and mental. So you cannot just refer to the one particular, like the afflictive emotions. So this is Lama Tsongkapha. So he brings this kind of critique even for the Indian masters. So to summarize, according to the Buddha, essentialist. So this is referring to the Vivasika school and the Sotantika school. So Buddhist essentialist. Essentialist means they believe things do exist by their own essence, right? So they are essentialist, right? So his students sometimes use the say materialist. So materialist. So it's essentialist. So Sotantika school and Vivasika school are essentialists because they continuously believing every phenomena, every entity that exists by their own essence. Since one cannot explain in the meaning of the word exhaustion in the manner the sublime continuum says, this is the Asangas, one of the texts, Lama, so we call Lama, says that the afflictions are primordially exhaust. So which is the aggregates are primordially exhaust because they are primordially devoid of arising through their intrinsic natures. One will have to explain exertions instead as the total elimination of the true actualizing the path. So the primordial exhaust. So why this saying, why is need to be kind of called primordially? So if the afflictive emotions like anger, attachment, if these negative emotions are primordially exhaust, why it causes so much suffering to the sentient beings? So if primordially from the beginning, from the start, it never has its own essence. So, which means there can be two, you can look at this, the meaning, and then from the different angles. Then say, what you are angry with, right? What you are attached to, has no essence by their own. Rather, you are projected, you imposes, you are grasping at. It seems to be existing and solid and concrete to you. So from their own, right? They no one or nothing, right? Kind of from their own side being attractive or favorable. So rather you project and you see, you believe, you're grasping at. So it seems to be more, more powerful, more. So the primordial means, so things that you are angry and attached, entities do not exist by their own essence. Right? Entities do not remain standing by their own essence. So all mental projections, your own mind. So again, going back to the subject itself, the anger and attachment. So if you look closely in anger and attachment, so anger and attachments, it's the kind of, anger and attachment is a part of the mind. It's a part of the mind. A mind that is confuses, mind that's influenced by the misconceptions, overpowered by the misconceptions. Therefore, this mind is acting crazy, right? So if you look closely to the anger and attachment, again, so even the mind, right, is not really acting or engaging and superimposing on the phenomena by their own power. It is more through the habit, more through the misconceptions, right? So the primordially, so there are primordially exhaust, primordially, so which means by their own essence, there is no anger, right? The anger attachment. There is no delusions. And the primordially, or from their own essence, there's nothing to be attracted, there's nothing to be detached. So, yeah, devoid of intrinsic natures, one will have to explain the exhaustion instead, total elimination through the actualizing the path. So you can see things are totally devoid of their own essence. Only you can see that, you can believe through the path, that the actual path. So wisdom realizing emptiness. When you develop the wisdom realizing emptiness, when you reveal the emptiness, then you will see things do not have their own essence. However, what is the actualized nirvana? What is actualized nirvana is present. Present, right? And the one who is actualizing no longer will be, conversely, what do you say? When what is actualized, nirvana is present. Okay. Mm-hmm. However, when what is actualized, nirvana, is present, so this thing, this essentialist school, so right, this essentialist school, the Sutantaka school and my own school, Vaibhashika school. So if they interpret this primordially, right, things are primordially exhaust with with intrinsic nature. So for them, this is they cannot really interpret, they cannot really understand the line of this sutras, total elimination of this suffering, and and where no additional suffering is lead to, right? Overcome elimination of the present suffering, elimination of the future suffering. And the path, this path is leading to the elimination of the present and the future suffering. So the sutra, Sutrayana for here, Vaibhashika school, my own school, they could not really, understand or explain literally or exactly, because for them, nirvanas is a parinirvana, so they're nirvanas, the final attainment. So they all believe that when individual attained the final nirvanas, free from the present suffering and the future suffering, at that time, there is no continuum of consciousness. There's no continuum of the form. No form, no consciousness. So there is no one that can attain the final nirvana. So when the nirvana is present, there's one who is actualizing is no longer will be. The person is no longer exists when the nirvana happened. So there is no one attained nirvana. And conversely, when one is actualizing, it is the present. When one who is meditating or completing the path of realization emptiness, one who is completing the path of the actualizing the realization emptiness, then you haven't really freed the suffering, or you haven't really eliminated the suffering, because you are there. As long as you with mind and body, you have to have a suffering for them, right? So, so the aggregate will not have ceased, and so on. Nirvana will have been actualized. Thus, one will be unable to explain the meaning of the sutra cited above. So, this sutra's elimination of the suffering, of the present suffering and the future suffering. So, this kind of path cannot be understood in the Vaibhashika school and the Sutantaka school. But Buddha, this sutra is particularly in the Hinayana Sutra. Because the Vaibhashika school of thought, the Sutantaka school of thought, the followers, this true school, they believe that when you reach the final nirvana, and you are no longer exist. So I think, I think this is not a new. I've been told it many times here, because the according to this school of thought, and most of the followers of this school, in the temple, they have a Buddha passing nirvana. So they think this is the final achievement. When Buddha is not, when Buddha was not really passing nirvana, he was alive, he has suffering. He has not eliminated the suffering. When he passed nirvana, the final nirvana, then he is free from the present suffering and the future suffering. Right. So in this particular sutra, the Hinayana Sutra, even it says, which is the total elimination of this suffering and that future suffering through this path. So there is no present path that while you are in that path and you have overcome the present and the future suffering, right? Because when you reach the final nirvana, you are no longer exist. There's no one to attain. So Chandrakirti saying that, so you should know in this sutra talks about total exhaustions and the elimination of the present and the future suffering through the present path, right? There's a one particular wisdom or the realizations that while you are in their wisdom and you have overcome the present and the futures. So this cannot be applicable in people who follow the Sutra, the Vaibhashika school and the Sotandika school. So according to us Madhyamikas, however, the exhaustion in the sutra is not exhaustion of the secure through the application of an antidote. So these total exhaustions, I mentioned, the Jamyogam said, question from the start or from the beginning. Right from the beginning, things are totally devoid of the intrinsic natures, right? So the intrinsic natures, empty of intrinsic natures, the negation element, intrinsic nature is not abandoned through applying the antidote, right? Because so negation element is a non-existing. So non-existing, there is no way you can apply antidote to overcome it. So non-existing to reveal this does not exist, right? So antidote means something that the presently kind of functioning and it causing kind of afflictions within the mind and the body, right? So Mahayana, the applications and antidote. Rather, it can be explained in the terms of the statement. It is called exhaustion because it is primordially exhaust. There's no need, right, through any condition to exhaust it. Is by nature it exhausts, right? Thus, we are able to explain the meaning of this sutra well in light of foregoing, the two things that are Noble Nagarjuna spoke of as being the same with respect to their referent are nirvana, that is the cessation of the suffering as a present, in the Hinayana Sutra on the basis of the defining what constitute exhaustions. The cessation presented in the Mahayana Sutta in terms of the absence of intrinsic arising. So this is a point that does not appear to have been understood. So I have explained it here in some detail. So in the Fundamental Wisdom 2, it says, yeah. So I think this is the chapter 14. Not 14. Chapter 15, yeah. Analyzing the nature. So it's the blessed one who clearly knows the entity and their absence has denied in the advice to Katyayana both it exists and it does not exist. So here the entity and the and the absence, their absence, entity. So as I mentioned, entity means in this particular kind of I think from this line, entity, which means things seems to be exist by their own, right? Their own essence. Things identified by their own essence, right? So this is superimposition. So therefore, it is. It has to be empty. It has to be non-existence. And their absence means now, and by emptying the intrinsic existing and, right, the emptying the intrinsic existing means things do exist, right? Intrinsically not exist, but things do exist because things are changing, things are functioning, right? Things momentarily changing. So total kind of the absence of intrinsic existing interpreting in the non-existing is again falling into nihilisms, underestimations, and free from over exaggeration and underestimations. So this was taught advice to the Katyayana, so Arya Katyayana. Arya Katyayana is the first, so one of the disciples of the Bodhisattva Muni from the distance, without having any receiving teaching direct from Buddha, who kind of reveals the Four Noble Truths, and like particularly 12 links and dependent originations, without listening to the Buddha. So how Buddha, so Katyayana was a king, right? He was a king in some other kingdom. So Ajaysattu, the king Ajaysattu, is one of the Buddha's follower, and Ajaysattu and their friend. So every year they send gift, right? So Ajaysattu one day came to the Buddha saying, so this year I want to send him the gift, something unique, something very, extraordinary. So then Buddha says, of course, now just you can. So Buddha, advises to draw the wheel of life, picture the wheel of life. The Ajaysattu, they send this picture to the Katyayanas. So Katyayana, just looking at the pictures, he reveals the 12 links and dependent originations. So then he decided to go back to see the Buddha and then become the followers and the great master. Right. So this Katyayana, so first Buddha, when he came, when the first Katyayana, Arya Katyayana, came to the Buddha, what he was advised by the Buddha, and Buddha says, TRAINEES, he says, there's a true extreme So you have to make sure they're free from the three extremes. One extreme is things existing kind of, inherently, and one things do not exist at all. So you have to find the balance. So you have to find the middle that free from the three extreme. So yeah, Aryakatayanas. Aryakatayanas who, yeah, and after the kind of being staying closer to the Buddha for many years, and then attained Arhat. There's one monastic line, monastic Vinaya text. He, after having attained Arhat, he violated monastic rules. So Aryakatayana thinks that now his mind is totally free from afflictive emotions. So the monks every 15 days, after 15 days, they gather for the confessions. So the all monks has to gather at the time. So Katayana thinks that I don't have to go because I have nothing to confess. So myself is free from afflictive emotions. I've attained Arhat. So I may not need to go there. So he didn't go several times. And then monks complained to the Buddha. So Katayana is not coming, attending that confessions. So Buddha said the rule again. So whoever nearby that monasteries, right, has to go to the confessions. Going to confession does not mean you have something to confess. So you have to witness, to be there for other people, right, to help other people, other monks, to listen their confessions. So Katayanas, after having Arhat, he violates the monastic vows. So yeah, so this statement too indicates how the rejections of the three extreme has been taught in the Hinayana Sutra. The sutra appears to be in the connected discourse. So Long Tenzing, this is one of the Vinaya texts. So these sources are only a few illustrated examples. So yeah, few Long Tenzing, yeah. There are, for example, numerous other lines in the Precious Garland not cited here, and one also finds numerous such statements in Nagarjuna's 60 stanzas of the reasoning. In his collection of the hymn, right? Hymn. Teso. So this Teso's particular text is kind of, whole lines is praising to the Bodhisattva. I think this is why Nagarjuna is not much praising to the Bodhisattva in the middle way. So there's not only one line. At the end, there's one line. And either those texts, even there's no salutation to the Buddha. so, so there's the collection of him. Yeah. So yeah, rebutting, right? Objections rise against these presentations. This has two parts: rebutting the objections of the mentioned in the commentary, rebutting the objections not mentioned, right? And the rebutting objection of the mention in the commentary here, in the commentary it says, some feel that if the selflessness phenomena is taught in the Sravakas vehicle, so there would be no point teaching the great vehicle. I understand their standpoint to be contrary to the reason and the scripture as revealed below. So this is what the Baba Vivek Midway Autonomous School, and he, in his book, he was kind of, kind of bring the argument, the critic to the Chandrakirti. So the Buddha Palita. So Baba Vivek brings the critic to the the Buddha Palita. So if Hinayana Sutras, he was saying that if Hinayana Sutra and teaches the emptiness, absolute intrinsic existence, then what is the point for the great vehicle? What is the point of Mahayana? Right? Because I think it's saying that the emptiness of the phenomena to overcome the obscuration to the knowledge. So the Buddhahood means the free from the obscuration to the knowledge. If this was taught in Hinayana, so Hinayana have realized the emptiness of the phenomena, then what is the point? What is this kind of, what is the need? Right? What is this kind of, what is the unique in the Mahayana? So here the opponents being critiqued is Baba Vivek. For example, Buddha Pali, the commentary on the 7th chapter on the fundamental wisdom, explained the meaning of the statement in the Hinayana Sutra about all phenomena being devoid of self-existence in terms of their lack of existence. Through an essence, Baba Vivek object to this in his lamp of wisdom, saying, if this so, it would be pointless to teach Mahayana, the great vehicle. One could ask the Baba Viveka, are you saying that Mahayana teachings in general would have no purpose? Or you are saying that teaching of the selflessness of the phenomena in Mahayana would have no purpose? So kind of, the pointless of teaching in Mahayana means, are you referring the general in the Mahayana or the emptiness of the phenomena in the Mahayana? So if it is the first, if there is logical entailment here, then the teaching of the Mahayana would be reduced to the teaching of the selfless phenomena. So there is no such entailment. However, for the great vehicle also teaches the following the Bodhisattvas ground and the practice of the perfections, such as generosity, aspirational prayers, and expensive dedications, right? And the great compassion and wisdom and the most excellent power of the Bodhisattvas, the phenomena that are inconceivable by the ordinary beings as well as the Sravakas and the Pratyekabuddhas. For example, the precious guidance states in the vehicle of the Sravaka, the Bodhisattvas' aspiration, prayers, their deeds, their dedication are not taught. So how can they become the Bodhisattvas? So the essential point of the Bodhisattvas' deed are not taught in their sutras, the Hinayana Sutra. So they are taught in the great vehicle. So this is the learned one should uphold. So the 6 perfections, compassions, and the ground of the Bodhisattvas, and great dedication. So these are never mentioned in the Hinayana Sutra. So the kind of, the point here is, if you are saying, if emptiness of the phenomena taught in Hinayana and Mahayana is no purpose, there's no point of teaching Mahayana. So for that argument, so the Mahayana is not just emptiness. Mahayana is the seven bhumi, the great dedications, the compassions, the Bodhisattvas, and so there's so many great qualities in Mahayana Sutra. So it's not just emptiness, right? So this was the state in the dispel the misconceptions that one could travel to the Buddhahood on the basis of path present in the Hinayana basket alone. So these are dispellings, yeah. So that there is no need for the another vehicles. The Mahayana, according to the Baba Vivek, Nagarjuna should have said here the following: given the selfless phenomena is taught in the great vehicle, what is the taught in the Hinayana Sutra must be inadequate. But Nagarjuna's instead explain how the great vehicle teaches the other dimensions, dimension like the method side, right? The vast aspect of the path. If you, the Baba Vivek, the option for the second alternative, here too there is no logical entailment. For in the Sravakas basket, the selfless phenomena is taught only briefly, while in the Mahayanas, selfless phenomena taught extensively through the multitude of avenues. So this is indeed the view of the noble Nagarjunas. He says, for example, in his hymn, right, to the world transcendent, without realizing signlessness, there is no liberation. You have declared. So you taught this signlessness, its entirety in the great vehicle. So there's talking about emptiness is taught in both school, both vehicle. Emptiness is necessary for the both vehicle in order to attain the Buddhahood or the liberations. But in the Hinayana, the briefly taught means so Nagarjuna's entireties, like kind of extensively teaches about emptiness in the Mahayana, in the Hinayana, and the brief, because the Hinayana practitioners seeking for mere liberation for oneself. For that, maybe it's not necessary to extensive understanding or revealing the emptiness. So first two lines of stanzas show how, since it is impossible the exhaustion of the afflictions without realizing signlessness, this is thus impossible to attain the liberation without it. The final two lines indicate that the signlessness, a selflessness phenomena, has been taught in the complete form or in the entirety in the great vehicle. From this, one discerns that selflessness phenomena is not taught in the entirety in the Hinayana teaching. Now one might wonder, I think just leave it here, Hinayana. So the emptiness, again and again, they keep kind of, kind of explaining the emptiness, realization emptiness, selflessness phenomena is necessary for both liberation and Buddhahood. Without this, there is no liberation, there is no Buddhahood. And then why in the Hinayana Sutras is that not much kind of, not too expensively or not kind of, it's not like in the Hinayana Sutras, and the Buddha mentioned that a star, a mirage, flame of lamp, a drop of dew, a bubble, a dream, a flood, a cloud, right? See conditioned things as such. And Buddha talk about conditional phenomena like a planting tree, so bubbles. So these, for the Nagarjunas, this is really talking about the emptiness of the phenomena. But it's not really expensively explained and taught in Hinayana Sutra. So Mahayana and soon the Namjenjipa, from the form to the enlightenment. So all phenomena are totally absence of intrinsic existence. The reason from the many avenues, many ways to explain emptiness. Kind of, expensively teaches of the emptiness in the Mahayana Sutra. So this is the only difference in the Hinayana and the Mahayana Sutra. So, and also it means Mahayana is not just unique from the emptiness. So Mahayana means the bhumis, the grounds, right? The 10 grounds and the dedications, dedication prayers, and the Bodhisattvas, the great compassions, and 6 perfections.
Of course, in the Theravada, they have 10 perfections. And though I haven't studied them, I gather that the 10 perfections map into the 6 perfections, that the 6 maybe is more consolidated in some way.
Huh?
He's asked that before. The 6 and the 10 perfections.
So 6 perfection and 10 perfections is taught in Hinayana. What is your question?
They don't teach, they don't have 6, they have 10.
Who?
10.
They, who's they?
They, the Theravadan people, they don't like to be called Hinayanans. One made me swear never to use that term again because he felt it was insulting to their vehicle. Lower. So therefore, in honor to that monk who made me swear that, I always use Theravada rather than Hinayana. But they have 10 perfections. That's what I understand from Sanjoy Brewer Chaudhary told me that many years ago. And you can look up the 10 perfections, I'm sure, on Google. I guess I should do that and see exactly, try and see how they relate.
Yeah, so that giggles
But,
me. So from the Google,
Sanjoy has somewhat the same view, in my opinion, that you have, which is these separations between the yanas or Mahayana and so-called Hinayana or Theravada. They're imposed. There were no such distinctions in Buddha's time. Maybe they're imposed later on, perhaps, after Buddha's death. So some of these things, some of these distinctions that are made in modern times between how Theravadins view things and Mahayanans view things, it may not have been, it may have not been that way during Buddha's time. That we, 6 perfections, 10 perfections, people just conceptually remap things a lot of times.
Like your 10 perfection in Google?
Forget Google.
So,
I think I'm getting Googled today.
Yeah, that continues giggles me. I think this,
I'm sorry.
This though, we have sometimes the problem. I believe, for example, if you already put yourself in one position, right? If you yourself put in the Mahayana, then you say this is the Hinayana as a lower school. So then there is discriminations. If you are Mahayana, right? If you are Bodhisattvas, then pointing to someone who's seeking for their own liberation, they abandon other sentient beings, and pointing them that this is the Hinayana means more. By saying it, it's not really keeping yourself distance. Like rather, it's like you have more close compassion, empathy towards the Hinayana. Now, the problem in the ordinary people is we already took the side. So before you talk about, so I'm already in one part, yeah. So then this whole problems. Yeah, for example, if you think that Chinese food is the best, so you are side of the Chinese food. So then, Italian food is so, the Chinese is good. So that makes other people not happy. So if you're not in the side, it's just simply talking about the taste and the quality, the ingredients. And then it says, oh, it seems this is more healthy. This is more good. So no one really take offense from it. So the problem is people who speak of Hinayana, Mahayana, they have already, right, kind of took themselves into one category. So I'm this side. So this is not that good. So this is always a problem, yeah. Yeah, I heard in Sri Lanka there's kind of the old, looks like 1930s, 40s during the British. There's some kind of, within because the practitioners, the followers of the Buddha, when they are under the power of the afflictive emotions, so they tend to discriminate. So even this, they took the Jataka Sutra, the Jataka story of the Buddha's lifetime, right? So they all kind of, they took it and put it, never used, because Jatakas keep talking about the Bodhisattvas, Mahayana. So they don't want, by following the Jataka, reading, teaching it, that makes them, they think it makes them lower, kind of, Hinayana. So this Bodhisattva's name is no need. And then even the school, they use the Ramayana for the point, for the school, a student to study about the point. So they adapted the Ramayana. So if they adapt the Jatakas keep talking about the Bodhisattvas. So this is the problem with individuals, kind of the delusional mind. So generally there is no really kind of, discriminations is always in the people's mind. and not in the object. So someone short, someone tall, and then there's many short people, and then pointing, oh, you're like a tree. So he that, right? It's the kind of offensive. And then when there's many big, kind of tall people, and they're pointing at the short one, oh, they're tiny, small one. So there's, in the reality, yes, he is short compared to him. He is tall. So what is the why this is kind of the offensive? Because so the expressions, kind of your kind of the way you say is already a discrimination in your mind. So discrimination is not by object, it's by the mind. So, and 10 perfections, 6 perfections. This is in the Mahayana Sutras and Mahayana teachings that talk about the 10 perfections and the 6 perfections. So the addition to the 6 perfections, and then you call tap, top, molam, yishi. So tap means method or skill. Top means kind of, the power of the discriminations. So discrimination means what is the right, what is the wrong, right? So the power of the discrimination, perfection of the discriminations. And then top molams, the power of the dedication of the prayer. Yishi means the power of the knowledge. So editing that, and then 6 become 10 perfections. So these are not really mentioned in the Hinayana Sutras, Theravadan Theravadan teachings. So this always mentions 6 perfections or the 10 perfections in the Mahayana Sutra. So then at all time, there's some follower of Hinayana school of thought, but follower of the Hinayana school of thought, but they are Mahayana. So one of the guru of the Atisha, his point of view is a Sutantika point of view. And he himself is a great Bodhisattva. So many of us, we are not even not Hinayana, no Mahayana, right? We just follow, right? We follow, we study, we listen to the teaching of the Mahayana Sutra. So we also listen to the teaching of the Hinayana Sutra, but we haven't become any of this. So to follower of to become Hinayana practitioner, to become Mahayana practitioner, at least you have to have a genuine renunciation. So no renunciations, not the Hinayana, not the Mahayana. So we haven't have yana, no vehicles. So yan is the vehicle. In Tibetan translated as the tekpa. Means kind of tekpa means the strength of carrying the burden. So we can say I'm a follower of the Mahayana Sutra, Mahayana traditions. That cannot prove yourself as Mahayana follower. So I think this is all problem because the great teaching of the Buddhas all the Lord's teachings and practice or applying with ordinary perceptions, then there's a problem. So if ordinarily following the Buddha's teaching and Buddha teaching become ordinary, yeah. Any other questions?
Geshe-la, it's not really a question, but
Sure.
you can just give me a thumbs up.
Yeah,
I'll
okay.
say a statement. You say thumbs up or thumbs down.
Yeah.
So it sounds like what it's being said is that the Hinayana is good at expressing emptiness, but it's not fully expressive. So Nagarjuna, or was it Chandrakirti, was saying that it's good at expressing emptiness, but it doesn't fully get to the point. So it's not to be discouraged, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's yeah. So I think here the one there's kind of slightly the problem is Chandrakirti is saying that emptiness is completely mentioned and kind of teaches in Hinayana Sutra and Mahayana Sutra. So which means the follower of Hinayana has revealed this emptiness, as Mahayana have revealed emptiness. Now, because of the sutra, the Hinayana Sutra, not expensively teaches the emptiness. Like, the root of the middle way, Nagarjuna's, they form the whole chapter, right? They they're talking about emptiness. Emptiness from the conditioned suffering, emptiness from the arising, emptiness from the, going and coming, emptiness from the change, emptiness from the continuum, emptiness the Buddha. So there's whole, and it's from the many angle that lets you look at emptiness from the many. So the Hinayana is not much that kind of, there's some like Buddha says, the every conditioned phenomena and it exhausts primordially, and then why every conditioned phenomena they exist like a bubble and a plantain tree, like a mirage and the dream phenomena, right? So the follower, so I think many of the followers, they understand the meaning of the plantain tree and the bubbles, the dream objects. So they understand that every conditional phenomena, absence or intrinsic existence. Right. So the Hinayana and Mahayana means the way they explain kind of the teaches through countless reasoning in the Mahayana, and then very briefly it teaches the emptiness in the Hinayana.
Okay, so that was that one. The second one was
thumbs up.
Yeah, thumbs up. Yay, good.
Coca-Cola.
Good. So the second was going back to when Chandrakirti was talking about single-pointed focus. So that sounds like he was saying it's good and it's helpful, but so not that you shouldn't only. Well, how do I say this? That single-pointed is necessary, but like you can't only do that. Like, okay, all right.
So I think here, single-pointed meditations, like single-pointed meditation with emptiness, right? First, sometimes we use the term shine, the calm abiding, right? So abiding in the absence of intrinsic existence, your mind that abides, your mind that the focusing, or your mind that placing on emptiness. So this means you have abide in emptiness. Through abiding in emptiness, that calms the misconceptions, the disturbance. So this kind of calm abiding is has power to eliminate the kind of afflicted emotions, conditioned suffering. Now, some come abiding, you can abide on kind of, tiny object like rice or kind of, sesame, kind of small object. And you are trying to bring your all kind of, mind to totally focus on that tiny object. So by training it many times, you may gain come abiding, because the object that you're realizing or focusing on is just sesame, till, right? So there is not much kind of, benefit to overcome the afflicted emotion, but it will, because of the power of the single point in meditation, it will, temporarily, you may kind of, how to say, keep yourself from the afflicted emotion and distractions. So avoiding the afflicted emotions. So if you leave the single pointed, when you come out in meditations, and right away there's all this negative habits comes. So this calm abiding hasn't much kind of benefit to your mind, but it can help you to avoid yourself from the afflicted emotion for temporarily. So you see those Ved Purans, there are many sadhus are known as a very kind of, what do you call this, who kind of swear, right? If say something, those meditators, if someone disturbs their meditation, then they get angry, and then they will kind of, what do you call, spell or
Like curse, like yell at them, curse them, like
kind of curse, yeah. So they curse. So it's very kind of effective. So they are in the years and years they can meditate, single point to meditate. If they're disturbed, when they come out to meditate, they curse you. So which means without anger, are you cursing other sentient beings out of compassion, out of realization emptiness? No. So years and years of meditations is only to bring the power to your mind and bring negative words through the mouth and they curse other people and then really kind of is damage to people, their life. So that's kind of, the power is through the single pointed meditation, power of anger, power of,
I think you mean they're putting a curse, a spell, a curse on someone, right?
Yeah.
Is that trying to say, not curse the way we may just use a bad word, but to put like a
black magic.
Black
I think that
I can imagine them.
Yeah, in all generation, all traditions. So king or the very powerful peoples, when they go to the forest, they always be alert, cautious, right? They are afraid of those, if sadhus are there meditating. So if they do something to disturb their meditations, they may get cursed and spell. So normally if they are seeking for the liberation, overcoming the afflictive emotions, so they are happy, they are very delighted to see them, but they are always worried if they meet those sadhus, So there's a story in Shantideva's text that one of the great meditators who meditated years and years in the forest, right? and then his hair grown kind of touches the ground, and then some mice come and they make the nest around his hair. So when he come out of meditations for years, and he find, oh, I did this, I've completed these meditations. Then he start to kind of noticing there's many mice that make nests around his hair, and he angry. So, so years meditations make him more, more pride, right? So it's, yeah. So that's why making different single-pointed meditations and meditating on 16 attributes of the Four Noble Truths, meditating on the emptiness of the intrinsic existence. So when you compare general single-pointed meditations and meditating on the 16 attributes without realization emptiness and with realization emptiness, there's three to compare. Then the last third one, the meditating on emptiness, intrinsic existing of all 16 attributes, is more powerful than the meditating on the 16 attributes without realization emptiness. And meditating on the contemplating on the 16 attributes without realization emptiness is more powerful than the single-pointed meditations. Yeah, that's it.
I'm happy you just brought that up again, because I think I'm slightly confused about something. It seems when you were talking about that, it sounded like you were talking about two separate categories or views of emptiness. One having to do with being absence of self-sufficiency in its own basis. I think you used terms like that. And I think there was another. I think you were contrasting two, and I didn't really quite get it.
Maybe you're saying absence of self-sufficient I and the absence of intrinsic existing of I. So the object the base is the same, I, right? I or self. So I being absence of self-sufficient I being absence of intrinsic. So the Prasangic school, the emptiness of I means absence of intrinsic existing of I. So then the Sautrantika school, Vairashika school, Mahayana school, their emptiness of the I is absence of self-sufficient I. So then what is the difference? Absence of self-sufficient I, absence of intrinsic existing of I, right? So absence of self-sufficient I means first we need to know what is the self-sufficient. The self-sufficient is the non-Buddhist school, they kind of believe to be I or as Atma, which exists independent and permanent. So empty of that kind of as the non-Buddhist school holds the I is the permanent and independent. That kind of I is empty. But right, by emptying permanent and independent I, you still haven't really emptied the I that is kind of exist within the aggregates. Sautrantika school, Vairashika school, Mahayana school, all they think that I should be findable within the five aggregates. if the I, myself, the person is totally absent, and right, if the I, person is totally absent in the body, feeling, perceptions, discrimination awareness, mental formations, if the I is totally absent, which means the self or I is never exist. So therefore, Suthantika school and the minority school, these things, so particularly Suthantika school things, the continuum of the mental consciousness is me, is the I. So this I die, I born, I go to next life. So it's the I is referring to the continuum of the consciousness, mental consciousness, particular, not the I consciousness, not nose consciousness, not referring to the body, not referring to the breath and motions, right? I is referring to the continuum of consciousness. But there is no independent I, like none with the school, but there is I within the mental consciousness. This is Suthantika school. So there, the selflessness, their understanding of the selflessness is, they think selflessness, kind of selfless, self-sufficient. Independent, permanent I is not, this is not exist, but I should be found in continuum of consciousness. So 16 attributes, particularly 4 attributes of the condition of suffering, the final is the selflessness. So they interpret that selflessness is absence of self-sufficient I. Right. So the Prasangic school says the empty of permanent I, independent I, is not enough. Is emptying that is not enough to realize the emptiness of the self. So Prasangic school says the self or person is never in here with body, feeling, perceptions, right? And then discrimination, mental formations, even not in continuum of consciousness. I, this person, is never exist. So like a forest as a singular that never exists as a singular in each trees. The trees are totally absent, that singular forest. But it exists, right? It exists by depending on the collection of the trees. So, like for example, then in the tall and short. So you can be found to be an entity of the tall by comparing yourself, right? It's short one. So this being kind of you being found as the tall, but depending on the short one, is the tallness is happen to exist, but depending on short. If this short is no longer there, instead of short ones gone and tall ones come, and suddenly you become short, right? So this tallness is not in here within your body. This tallness is not in the other person who is tall. This is two things compare, something manifests, something arises. So comparatively, relatively, things always things always manifest, things always arises, things always the known to the consciousness by comparing relatively.
Can you tell us the difference between non-origination and non-arising? The difference.
It's the same. It's the same.
It is the
Yeah,
same.
yeah. Non-arising, non-originations. Yeah, because we have the concept of arising, concept of originations, right? The condition of suffering, the arising of the condition of suffering, origin of the condition of suffering, right? And then it says the arising of the sprout, origin of this, the arising of the sprout, which is the seed. So there's a conceptually kind of the construct is the arising of the sprout and origin. So when you conceptually and constructing the arising of the sprout is by itself is one of the entity, right? So this is how conceptually construct. And so this entity, which is origin, derived from, coming from the origin, which is the seed. So it's played by the thought. If you exactly follow that kind of entity that displayed by the thought, so then this particular sprout has to pre-exist in the seed, and from it an air comes, like a person coming from the house, right? When you come out from the house, oh, he's coming out from this house, so he must be there in that house. So if we follow exactly it appears, it displayed by the thought, and then there is misconceptions. So these we should know arising is constructed phenomena. It's the entity that is defined and designated by the thought, not by the object itself. So similarly here, you say the taste of the bread is a single unit identified. And the smell of the bread, again, is single unit. And the color of the bread, tactility of the bread. Because this eye, nose, tongue, so has the access, only one part. The tongue has access to the taste and nose has access to smell. So the nose is not feeling, right? Tongue is not smelling. So because of there's a different kind of sensual the door to access separately, so the conceptually says the taste of the bread, tactility of the bread, smell of the bread. So as it conceptually kind of identified separately, put it in single unit, if that is the case, that is the truth, then this whole taste, smell are classic form. They all should be located and separately within the braid. So braid, there must be braid that kind of out there, which can hold the taste separately, which is holding the smell in a separate location and holding the color in separate locations. If this is not true, and this identifying in a single unit is also not truly exists. So, and who identified? What makes that entity of the taste and separate from the entity of the smell? What is that making it? So your thought. So that's why everything is designated by the thought, constructed by the thought, imposed by the thought. So just to know, knowing that, having convinced with that, is to free the mind from the misconception. So this is not really kind of, it's not practice of the Dharma, it's not religiously. It's kind of knowing the reality as it is, right? So then my way of saying, explaining, and way of other master way of saying then you can impose, his tradition, this traditions. But what you're explaining has nothing to do with the culture and tradition. So looks like religion means in other's eye. So other eye, and seems kind of different, but cannot explain. And say, in his religion, that traditions. So for you, it's not following others say. It's saying the taste, smell, tactilities are entity by the thought. They do not exist by themselves. Right? So there is nothing really religiously practicing. But other can impose me, and this is my religion. Because the way I explain, maybe someone explained it differently. So it's not tradition, it's not a culture. It's just Buddha's Shakyamuni's teaching is finding the way to see the reality as it is. So that's why Buddha is Tathagat. Right? Tathagat means know of the reality as it is. One who knows the reality as it is. One who is totally gone in the knowledge, the knowing the reality as it is. Tathagat. Right? So because he is Tathagat, and he finds the, permanent bliss, his mind cannot be distracted, disturbed by distorted informations. Not through the language, not through the cultures, not through any kind of information can mislead, misguide the omniscient. So Sugata, Tathagat, right? The able one, the awakened one. So we are not Sugata, we are not Tathagat. So we can be disturbed and distracted many times and every step, right? So if someone says, is it true? Is it true? There was a story some our teacher, sometimes they tell this kind of story. So there's one guy from the part of the Tibet, we call around the Lhasa. So far from the Lhasa city. So these people are calling a donkey as a guru. And he said, I have a guru. Then he brings to the Lhasa. And Lhasa people said, this is not a guru. This is pungu. It's a donkey. And he was confused a little bit. Okay, I follow. This is pungu. And then he went to another place. They said, no, this is not a guru, not a pungu. This is something else. So he was kind of confused, and he was not sure what is this animal called. So this is like our mind is like, if this says people saying some kind of things, and we may think, this is right, and others says this is right. So even the Dharma practice, we always follow the informations, right? The informations. So informations is always the like the information the one person and always finds different from other person. So the Dharma practice, if you follow only informations, then it's very difficult. So I think chapter 18, Nagarjuna said, So you have to gain the knowledge that is not really taught or told or guided, right? Kind of, means. So something that knowledge is helping you to pacify the disturbance, right? Disturbance or afflictions. And so you don't see, this is what I'm seeing as it is not someone has told, right? It's not a borrowed knowledge. So it's not constructed or fabricated by informations, right? So you have to find this kind of knowledge. So Buddha teaching is to teach the kind of his follower to see the reality as it is. Yeah, there's nothing to do with emptiness, the impermanent condition of suffering. It's nothing to do with culture or the tradition. So, and also I said, before that, the discriminations, the quality of this discrimination is not negative. It's not made negative by your own delusional. So the perfect discriminations, the Buddha's, the omniscient, one of the quality of the omniscient, what is the right and wrong. Sometimes if you say, how are you doing today, can be discrimination. Sometimes and then sometimes say, are you well? This can be discrimination. So if someone closer to you, someone very close to you, and that person may say, are you well today? So we accept, oh, he's concerned with me. He's so kind. So if other people say, are you well? What do you mean by are you well? So I think, So sometimes people always interpret the discrimination in the language. This word is discrimination. This word is not discrimination. This is the way of saying and how you say it, in what kind of motivation, intention you say it. If doctor says to you, right, so and you don't kind of find this offensive because you ask him, right, what is my condition? So if the discrimination is determined by the language in the term, so that whoever used that, and it has to be in the discrimination. So the self-sufficient and empty intrinsic existence. Oh, 422. Okay. Chanju simjo rinpoche, ma jeba na jeju, jeba nyamba meba nya, kone kondo pewash, tonye tawa rinpoche, ma jeba na jeju, jeba nyamba meba, kone kondo pewash, pama simje tamje, deda denju, ngendro tamje, tado towa, chanju simba, kanda sushu, Tada kunye molong jujuruji karura weko bishi ngazu pendan de wama nujung. Jeren sama tinzin jazuji shabe sede badu tenjuruji.
May the precious body mind not get on arising. May the bone have no decline but increase forever. May the precious mind realizing emptiness not yet born arising grow. May the bone have no decline but increase forevermore. Due to all these merits, may all father and mother sentient beings have all the happiness. May all lower realms be empty forever. Wherever there are Bodhisattvas, may all their prayers be accomplished immediately. In the sacred land surrounded by snow mountains, you are the source of all benefit and happiness. More powerful Chinese Tenzin Gyatso, remain in this world until samsara ends.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.